Hello there, welcome along. This is Business Connections Live, another Wednesday night, another live program. Great to have your company as always. This is program number 72. Now, my guest tonight is Joanna Godoyne. She's the owner of Inside Out Image, an image and impact expert, helping individuals and also businesses and organisations achieve greater professionalism when it comes to the way they are perceived and the way they look. Joanna, it's lovely to have you with us this evening.
Hello.
Important area this, isn't it, when it comes to the way we are perceived when we walk in the door. Now let's get one thing straight, the elephant in the room. This isn't just about the way you dress, is it? We're talking about a whole raft of things here tonight, aren't we?
Yes, absolutely. It's beyond what you're actually wearing at any point. And it's an area that's often massively underestimated by people. They think their experience and expertise is enough, but in reality, people buy people. So to get your expertise and experience listened to, you need to have a positive personal image and impact in the first place.
And what we're going to be talking about tonight, we're going to be talking about the way you look, the way you dress. We're going to be talking about the way you look after yourself, the way you present yourself, and also the use of the voice as well.
Yes, voice and body language.
And body language, very important. How did you get into this? What's your background? Tell us a little bit about you, because, you know, where did you go off to learn these particular skills? And have you ever been standing up there on a stage yourself and presenting to a large room full of people, and you've been thinking to yourself, I could do this better?
Yes, I started out in marketing, a glamorous world of nappies and toilet roll. I used to hang out with the Andrex puppies. Then I worked in consultancy for a fair few years as well, a mixture of roles there, management and marketing, before thinking I wanted to do something different, something more people orientated. I spent time working with a career coach, a wonderful lady who really helped me to look at what I wanted to do with my time, what I was good at, what my core skills are. And it came from there really, and I'd always seen how important image and impact was in corporate life. It really made the difference to whether people got listened to or not, and their career progression. So I trained with a company called First Impressions up in Warwick. The reason for choosing them was they didn't just cover the appearance aspect, as we talked about. They also looked at body language and communication skills, which a lot of the other training companies didn't cover. They were solely around, you know, what suits you and dress codes and things. So I trained with them because really I want to help people develop and grow to get to where they want to in their careers. The other important aspect is I wanted for me every day to be different, and certainly when you run your business it is, but for me it's very different, as in I have all the marketing and the selling to do, but I also work with people one-to-one as well as run workshops. And I love the one-to-one work because it's quite intense and you really see someone change and grow. But the workshops are great too, and I love the challenge of those, because often you've got a group of people that perhaps not all of them have chosen to be there. So you've got to overcome that challenge, and you never know what questions you're going to get. And clearly this is a controversial area, it's very personal, so lots of debate.
So in business, do you think in general we do make some huge monumental mistakes, some big faux pas, where in the way that we dress, in the way that we present, in the way that we communicate with people, right down to the way we shake hands at them? Do we make some huge faux pas in that particular area, do you feel?
Yes, and it varies. And whenever I ask the question in a workshop, what do you notice about others? There are very simple answers, but very varied as well. So it means you do have to think about your whole image. You can't think, oh, it doesn't matter that my shoes are scuffed and need healing. They're on the floor, no one will notice, because certain people will always notice that, and it has an impact on their impression of you. So it is important to think about the detail. So whilst generally not everybody makes massive mistakes, everybody can improve in this area, and as I said earlier, I think they do underestimate how important it is. They think, why does it matter? But then if you go to a networking event, imagine you're a lawyer or you're a coach, there's bound to be other people that do what you do in the room. How are you going to differentiate yourself and stand out positively to those you meet who might not have a need for your services or product there and then, might be later down the line, but you're going to be memorable to them for positive reasons?
How much do you think that we do wrong, we do consciously wrong, or is it all subconscious habit, years of inbreeding? I mean, what is it? Is it a case that we stand up there and because that's the way we've always done it. That's the way we'll continue to do it.
Yes, that definitely plays a big part. I mean, there are some people that say, oh yeah, I know I'm a bit scruffy, and they may perhaps consciously know that. And scruffy is a problem. You know, it doesn't, I'd say to people, you don't always have to be in a suit. It's not about putting people always in a suit. If you're in more casual clothes, that's fine, as long as it's appropriate for what you do. But you need to look like you care about what you look like. So there are conscious things like that, but there's also a lot of subconscious things. We have mannerisms, we have things we do and we don't realise we do, and it's really worth getting somebody to come and help us work through that and really explain to us what they see and what we're communicating, because what you're communicating will determine whether people will engage with you in a professional environment, and if they do, to what degree, how they treat you actually. Do they treat you as an equal, or do they really respect you for what you do, or otherwise?
Well, it's going to be a fascinating hour. It truly is going to be a fascinating hour. So if you find yourself in a situation where people seem not to be taking you seriously, or you're not really getting the callbacks that you thought you were going to get back, maybe it's down to the fact that the way you are approaching different people, these potential clients or customers that are out there, the way you are approaching them may be, well, the problem is. And here's a way now that you can stop for a moment and just reflect on where you are in the way that you present yourself to the general public. We're going to be talking about everything from, well, the way you dress. We're going to be talking, as Joanna said, to the way you greet somebody, the way you use your voice, the way you communicate, and your body language as well. Are you open or are you closed? We'll be looking at all of that in the next 50 minutes or so, right here on Business Connections Live. A fascinating hour lined up. Okay, now on our show last week, we had David Endersby of TW18 Business Media. Are you getting your social media right? Or are you like so many other businesses where you're getting your social media not just wrong, but very wrong? Did you start off with a flurry at the beginning, doing hundreds of tweets, and then a couple of weeks later, did you find yourself doing no tweets? Did you start your Facebook page off going, yep, this is right for me, and then found a couple of weeks down the line that, well, I'll do it tomorrow? Are you using social media platforms at all? Right down to something as simple as your LinkedIn profile. Have you written it professionally and in a way that will engage with people? Well, David spoke about all those particular topics on the programme, and to give you a bit of a reminder of what happened on last week's edition of Business Connections Live, here's David Endersby. My guest tonight is David Endersby, TW18 Business Media. Now, David helps businesses with social media profile setup and also training in Facebook, Twitter, and also Google+.
Because I think the problem that people have with social media is they dabble in it a little bit and then they say it's not working for me and they wonder why it isn't working. The number of Twitter accounts I see where they say, I'm on Twitter, I tried it, it didn't work for me, and you'll look at their Twitter account and the first day there's 10 tweets or 15 tweets and then you look a week later and there's 2 or 3, and then 3 months later it's just dropped to nothing. There are lots of people out there promoting their business, forgetting that what we're trying to do is promote the person behind the business and trying to get some of the personality of that business across. I mean, if you say to somebody, what do you want to achieve from your social media, which is probably the first question you should be saying when you're sitting down saying, I want to do social media, it's why do you want to do it, what are you trying to achieve? And most small business owners will say, well, I want to get more sales from it. And most big companies have, as you say, have got a dedicated customer service team on social media, and you'll get a response normally within an hour. What I say to them is, it's past now, is that it's going to evolve. It's part of the marketing network now, and it may change, and people may move from Facebook to Twitter to Instagram to Tumblr or whatever, but there will always be now, I think, a place for social media in your marketing. What do you want your social media to achieve? If you want to achieve visitors to your website, well, make sure that your website's worth visiting, which there are hundreds of social media platforms. Some are very niche markets for people, but there are more and more coming on all the time. So it's a question of looking at, as I said, where are your customers likely to be, and marketing to those people. Especially in the early days, would connect their Facebook and Twitter accounts together, and so you would see obscure Facebook posts that had retweet at somebody or other and just a couple of lines of text, and think this doesn't really look very good on Facebook. Or you'd have on the Twitter account, you'd see a Facebook link, which obviously had a picture to it that you couldn't see. So just if you are looking at, because we all want to save time, that's, we're all short of time, people are doing it themselves, you're looking for time-saving applications, but just be careful, on the platforms that you actually connect. When you are Googled, not only will your website come up, but your Facebook page and your Twitter will come up as well, so you'll appear there. There's 3 questions that I think you should be asking yourself when you start off, and they are, why have you joined social media? What is your purpose in joining it? What is your brand's actual purpose, if you've got a brand, or your company, and what do you actually want to achieve from your social media? And these are all going to be different answers for different people, but once you've got that, then you can decide, once you know what you want to achieve, then you can start looking at how you're going to do that, and that will give you guidance as to which platforms you should be on. It's having the big picture and then breaking it down into smaller chunks of how I'm going to achieve that. And obviously that is different for more or less every company. Different companies have different ways of what they actually want to achieve. They've got different resources behind it as well, so you've got to be realistic about what you're going to achieve. So if you're purely a B2B person, then again, LinkedIn is probably one of those that you don't actually think of as a social media channel so much. It's finding the platform your audience is on, not the platform you like using. You may love putting images up on Instagram, but if you are marketing to the over 50s, the good thing for small business is that you can have 5 social media platforms on it, so you can run your Twitter, your Facebook, your Google Plus, your Pinterest from one platform. Thank you very much. I think the key thing that I would say is, as we said time and time again, is why do you want to be on social media and what are you trying to achieve from it? Then look to see where your customers are, find the right platforms and be realistic with what you can achieve. Look at the resources that you've got to post your social media. If it's just you doing it, then set aside a certain amount of time. Don't be too ambitious with it. And remember to interact with people and actually be social with them.
David Endersby there from Business Media, fantastic bloke as well, some really good advice. If you do have an opportunity to watch the entire hour, it will be an hour well spent looking at all aspects of social media, how you can kickstart your social media for your business. A lot of people go into social media and they feel they're getting no return on it whatsoever, and it is very much a case of what you put in, you're going to get out if you work hard at it. Also, your expectations, I think, with social media. David does highlight that. If you're thinking that social media is just going to sell product for you, it's going to race off the shelves, to use an old shopping TV phrase, it's flying off the shelves. It's not going to happen. What it will do, though, it will raise maybe the awareness of who you are, maybe the awareness of the brand or the product that you actually have. And from that, you can build on that to create maybe some sales, a little bit of traction. But that's what it's all about. It's amazing when we do these programs, if somebody uses social media, we see a huge increase in the number of views. If they don't, then you just see it just sitting there in the doldrums. Quite interesting, but using social media, particularly for this, they say that this is the age of video. It's video on the internet 2.0. We've moved on from the straightforward talking heads, straight down the lens, single shot, looking at things that are a little bit more expressive, a little bit more engaging, something that actually works a little bit stronger, a more powerful message delivery for the individual subjects that the things cover. So anyway, check out David Endersby. I'm getting on my high horse now about video, and do check him out. It's a great show, and he's from TW18 Business Media. My guest this evening is Joanna Godoyne of Inside Out Image, an image and impact expert, helping individuals actually sort out the problems that they have when it comes to the perception that people will have of them. When you walk into a business meeting or anything like that, how do you sort things out? How do you make certain that you are looking professional? How do you make certain that you are looking the business? And that's what Joanna is going to explain to us. Joanna, in fact, we had a dress issue just then, in fact, with the microphone. And it's interesting because that's what business is all about, isn't it? You go out into business and you've got to be dressed for the appropriate job that you're about to do. You've got to give the impression. Do you think a lot of it, though, is down to social acceptance of what people expect you to look like? And really, it doesn't matter how you dress, but you've got to dress socially acceptable to be successful.
Yes, and my big word is always appropriateness. So you've got to think about what is it you're doing in any one day. Is it a pitch meeting? Is it a networking meeting? Is it an existing client, a new client? Is it somebody that knows you already? Do you know how they're going to be dressed? Because if you're in a dress code, so to speak, that's far away from how they're dressed, that's going to alienate you a bit more. But you've also got to think about what people expect of you. So for instance, if you go to a networking event and you meet a lawyer, you expect a lawyer to be dressed quite formally, don't you, in a suit? If you meet a personal trainer, whilst you don't expect them to be there in their sweaty gear, you expect them to look presentable, but you don't expect them to be in a very formal suit. So it is about thinking about what people expect of you for the profession that you're in. And particularly for a job interview, I would always recommend you really research what's the culture of the company. How do people there dress? And whilst you'll dress up more for an interview, just take that into account and think about that quite carefully, because if you're overdressed or underdressed, you're going to feel very uncomfortable and not communicate yourself in the best possible way.
Which leads me on to a little question, a little thought that crossed my mind as you were saying that. What about companies that have this dress down day? I mean, do you have a personal view on that? And do you think it's the right way? Because it's very interesting. You will go into organisations that will have their dress down day, and visitors to these organisations, of course, are dressing for that business when they're arriving, and therefore they feel uncomfortable. What's your feelings about that?
Yeah, it's a big problem actually, and a lot of companies have gone to a dress down day, but it's done a couple of things. People have dressed down far more than they ever intended. But the company find it quite hard to pull that back. So that's why usually they bring in people like me to talk about the importance of image and impact, and each individual thinking about how they're coming across. And also it means the standard for the rest of the week has dipped a bit as well. I had an individual client, I think the year before last, and he was a bright guy. He was in his late 20s, PhD, all of this, working at a bank in Canary Wharf. And actually his wife called me saying he's having a real problem at work. People don't respect him. They think he's really young. And he was fortunate that he looked young. And when I went to work with him, I could see the main problem was that Monday to Thursday he was in his smart banking suit, as was suitable for the environment, but on Friday, to be honest, he looked like he was going to wash the car in a faded green t-shirt and jeans.
So what was going through his mind, and what is going through people's minds when they are dressing for the office? Do they just take advantage because they think it is a dress down day, therefore they will go down that route, and they just go a little bit too extreme?
Yes, the problem is people don't know what's in between, especially if they work in a bank or a law firm or something, what's in between that formal outfit and their casual weekend clothes.
See, it's this word, isn't it? Casual smart, isn't it?
Yeah, people don't know what it means.
What does that mean? Yes.
It does vary by sector. There are sort of 5 dress codes which are quite boring to walk through in detail.
No, but do walk through them now. I was unaware of this, so go on, they're far away.
So you've got very casual weekend hanging out wear, jeans, absolutely. You've got tidy casual, which might be jeans but very dark jeans. You've then got sort of
trainers or shoes?
Sort of, you might even have shaners, which are a bit of a cross for men between shoes and trainers, but not trainers as in running trainers.
Right. And white's out, isn't it?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, I wear white.
And day to day, you know, in something like media or IT, that might be what people wear. That might be the norm. So this is where this appropriateness comes in. But in a law firm, I would say that casual, as in normal colour jeans, never.
Really?
Okay, so it's thinking about your sector. Then you've got the sort of business casual area, which is where people get stuck. So it's a bit in between. For women, you might still have a jacket on, but a more relaxed jacket, more relaxed jewellery, a few more patterns, more interesting colours. Then you've got the next step up is relaxed business. So it's not a formal matching suit, as in, for a gentleman, jacket and trousers, for a woman, skirt and top, or trousers and top, or dress and jacket, but a bit more relaxed. Whereas formal business is always high contrast. So
white shirt, dark
suit, same for women too, to create that sense of authority. For men, always a tie. So for instance, not wishing to comment on you too personally, but what you're wearing now is a bit more relaxed business because you're not wearing that high contrast, but you've still got a tie on.
Right. And they can't see the pair of shorts I'm wearing under the table.
They can't, I can. No comment.
I like it. So no, I've never realised there's all those different aspects of when it's dressed. Who gets it wrong the most, do you think? Is it the gentlemen or is it the ladies? Who make the biggest mistakes, the biggest faux pas when it comes to fashion?
I would say, I wrote an article on this a while ago, that women get more harshly judged. A lot of people might think that's unfair, but it's reality, I think, because women are judged by other women, and they're certainly judged by men. Men tend to only be judged by women, which is quite interesting, and is less to get wrong for men. Men don't have accessories, they don't wear jewellery.
Well, this is always a big criticism, isn't it, of a function, for instance, a black tie. So the guy can go down the hire suit shop, bow tie, white shirt, black suit, hired, sorted. Yeah. Whereas is it going to be long? Is it going to be short for the women? What are they going to wear? Is it going to be frilly? Is it going to be fitted? Is it going to be low cut? Is it going to be high cut? I mean, and it just goes on and on and on. There are so many options.
Yes, there are.
But for the guy, it's just a piece of cake, isn't it? White shirt, black suit, and a bow tie.
Absolutely, and that translates to the workplace. That whilst it's advantageous actually for women now because they can inject more style, more individuality into their workwear because they don't have to always be in these formal suits except in certain professions, certain occasions. But for women that are perhaps less intuitive or they haven't had any help, they don't really know what that looks like. So they end up feeling overdressed, or as they become more senior, like they're just wearing this sort of suit uniform that really isn't so relevant anymore, but they don't really know what else to do. So
is that a throwback then to the power suits, to power dressing a wee bit?
Yeah.
And is that still an appropriate way to dress for women in the office?
Not always, no, absolutely not.
Is it a bit scary? Does it scare the guys?
I think it does actually. And what I spend a lot of my time when I advise women one-to-one saying is don't try to be a man. I know that might sound odd, but you should still be feminine, not overly feminine, but you should be yourself and be feminine, not try to be like a man. So I think power dressing has really had its day. There are certain sectors, legal and banking, where there's more of the formal dress and suiting for women and men, but that's diminishing. And a lot of law firms now, I was speaking at one a couple of weeks ago, they're more dressed down, but of course it does bring the challenge that you said, that if clients are in the office and they're not just kept to a certain part of the office, i.e. the meeting rooms, it creates a real challenge for what else they're seeing. So it is a big challenge for big and small organisations because your people represent your business.
I suppose when you are in business, it is very, very difficult to know. Obviously tastes have changed, and I think sometimes television is a huge influence on the way people behave and the way they dress. When you as a woman go out and you see people in business, should we say, at networking events and at events like that, are you sometimes surprised? What do you think the biggest faux pas are that just Joe to Joe public in business are actually making?
It sounds ridiculous, but the obvious things, the basics, and when I run workshops on the importance of image and impact and what really counts, and I get on to the basics of, really hygiene, attention to detail, people think, really? Do you really need to mention this? But absolutely, I network all the time for my business, and I see so many things that are simple to fix, but people just don't
worry about them. Give us an example.
Oh dear, hopefully he won't be watching this, but a couple of years ago I remember going to a networking event. I was talking to this guy, I think he was an accountant. He was very formally dressed, very well dressed, but his twitching nasal hairs completely distracted me, and I didn't listen to a thing he said because he was a bit taller than me, and all I could see was these grey nasal hairs twitching away, complete distraction. So in terms of...
See, that's all right for you, a young woman, but as you get older, hair starts sprouting out of places that hair shouldn't be growing from, and it's just one of those things.
It needs managing, though. Equally in body language, I went to a networking event last week, and I was speaking to somebody, and I could tell we were in a group of 3 of us, and she was just trying to anticipate where she'd move on to next, and looking over our shoulders.
Eyes, isn't it?
Yes,
you're looking around all the time.
It's really rude, actually, and people engage with people and work with people that they firstly obviously know, but they like and they trust, and those sorts of things prevent you from getting to certainly like and trust those people that you're engaging with.
Well, I think that is absolutely fascinating what you're saying, that first of all, I'm going to check my own personal nasal hairs at the end of the programme today, because you never know, they do sprout very quickly. If it would only grow was coming from up here a little bit more, I'd be very, very happy. But there you go, you can't have it all. It's not all, though, about personal hygiene. It's not all about what you wear. It's also about the way you are. It's about the way you ask questions, about the way you come over to people. And you mentioned that you also look at the way people's body language. And while I think that is a real art in itself, and it's something I find absolutely fascinating. The old classic about, you can trust me, I've got nothing to hide, open palmed. Do people make a lot of mistakes when it comes to the way that their deportment, the way they hold themselves, even down to the way they walk? Are they the other areas that can cause another person to mistrust them, perhaps, in business?
Yes, absolutely. We communicate a lot subconsciously through our body language, and we read a lot from other people. So if our body language is not consistent with what we're saying, our body language is more likely to be believed. So you need to think about that quite carefully, particularly if you're in an environment where you're meeting people at networking or you're presenting. I run a lot of workshops, and I genuinely love those and I enjoy them, and so it's not something I have to think about. For people that are more nervous of that, if they stand there and they're fumbling around and they're saying, I really enjoy presenting, they're just not going to be believed. So it's about creating that consistency all the way through, as if people are confused by what you're communicating, they're not going to listen to anything. And whilst your expertise is very important in your experience, you won't have that listened to if people are distracted by either body language communicating something else or something strange in your voice. So it's really, these 3 areas are really important to consider, all of them. So
just say what the 3 areas once again are, just so that we've actually got that as a mental note to self. So the 3 areas, number 1 is? Appearance.
Secondly, body language. And thirdly, I'm going to say communication. I really mean voice in this instance, but it's easy for people to remember ABC. To think about their image.
That. That's very good. Appearance, body language. I like it. Okay. All right. Now we're going to go on to using your voice, because the voice is a wonderful instrument, something that people can absolutely play with. And there's always sometimes that disappointment when you speak to somebody on the telephone, and you get to meet them, and they're nowhere like what you perceive them to be on the phone. But let's stay with the actual body language. Biggest mistakes then was we talked about the arms folded,
closed arms.
Where I mentioned about the palms of the hands open. We also sometimes see people hiding behind notepads and things like that, using it nearly like a shield. So what are the other more common mistakes that people make every day?
Well, one of the big things to be aware of is your posture. It's my personal difficulty, actually. As I'm sat here, I have to imagine that piece of string being pulled up through my head, because it's sitting like this, sitting up straight, walking up straight is not my natural thing. I have actually quite poor posture. So for me, that's what I need to think about. But it really affects your presence in a room. Think about as you walk in, whether it's pitch meeting or you're going to present or networking, it affects a lot of how people will judge you, so and they'll react to that. So posture is very important.
So standing up straight, shoulders back, standing up straight,
shoulders back,
showing that you actually believe in what you're about to deliver to the potential client or customer.
Absolutely, and quite open posture as well. The minute you close yourself up, not even just the crossed arms, but pulling yourself inwards, you're looking nervous and lacking confidence. And if you're really looking for people to pay you for a service or engage you, they need to be confident that you're going to do that job well. And if you don't communicate yourself confidently, they will make the link in their head that actually how confident are you going to be at delivering for them.
Now, a lot of people have real issues about what they do with their hands. When you're standing there at the presentation, do you move your hands around? Do you articulate? I tend to articulate with my hands. I use my hands a lot. Some people use the hand movements as a kind of nearly a metronome so that they can pace out the words that they're going to say. Are there any recommendations that you would give to the way people use their hands? You've already said use them in an open way to invite people in. So have you got any other advice that you would give?
Yes, you don't want to create a barrier with them. You don't want to ever be making gestures that are above your shoulder height, because then you're getting towards people's faces, and that's quite, again, you're putting a barrier and it's a bit intimidating for the other person. Next, I would say don't overuse them. You think about politicians. They actually have training in how to use them to good effect to really emphasise points. If somebody's just flinging their hands about, not really for any reason, that's very distracting. So again,
you start to watch their hands, don't you? Exactly. And you stop listening to what they're saying.
Absolutely, and so that applies really to mannerisms as well. We all have things that we do that we perhaps don't realise we do. And that's why sometimes it's good to get some help to understand what you are doing.
All right then, now we've been quite open about everything. So when you started looking at this, at going into this, you must have had that moment of reflecting. You've already mentioned about that you feel you don't have, sometimes you will have not particularly good posture. So there is a conscious effort that makes sense. When you came in the door to the studio this evening, there you were standing upright, and that's the perception. That's our perception of you walking in through the door. Can it be sometimes that you have perceptions of what your own problems are when in fact nobody else will notice them?
Sometimes if you're particularly nervous about something, and others might not notice it, but it's often the other way, that you might have something that you're not aware of and other people will notice it. Yeah, so a common one with women, for example, is flicking of hair. Think of a woman presenting or speaking in a meeting. If she's got longish hair, she'll flick it just to sort of nervous twitch, and that's very distracting. So I would always say to people, think about if you've got anything surrounding you that you could fiddle with that would be, a distraction to other people. So a good example is I remember my dad, when he was going to speak at my sister's wedding, he said to me, remind me that I shouldn't have any coins in my pocket, because he used to work in business and he would fiddle with the coins.
And that could look awful from a distance, couldn't it?
I mean, yes, I hope he's not going to mind my example. That's, for men, that's a big one, things in the pockets. Women is probably the hair. People do it out of nervousness. It's like people speed up their voice if they're nervous. So it's just trying to really be aware of things you might do, and if you've got any particular mannerisms that you do a bit more when you're in a nervous situation, perhaps.
Once you become aware of them, particularly with mannerisms, how do you stop them?
Well, that's where it depends on the specific example, but I work with people in a way to try and get them to think about it in an alternative way, do something different. And it is trial and error, and it's about knowing yourself as well and what works for you. So I'm somebody, when I present, I never have any notes. And I did some co-presenting with somebody a little while ago, and he did have little cards with notes on, so I thought, well, I'll maybe give that a try, but it just doesn't work for me. It completely ruins my natural style. So it's about working with somebody to understand what their mannerisms are, how they work best, and how can we make them be their best self for whatever they're doing.
And of course the interesting thing is that when you're talking about having notes, the moment you put notes there as a prop, you're looking down at them.
Absolutely.
And we lose the eye contact. So what should we be doing with our eyes? Now I think guys are dreadful for this, actually. You mentioned earlier on about people at networking events who are looking over your shoulder all the time for the more interesting person than you. And they're looking all the time. But what should we do with our eyes? Where should we look when, for instance, we're in a negotiation kind of mode, when we're talking to somebody, when we're presenting? What should we be doing with our eyes? What's important?
Eye contact is absolutely vital. Now, it shouldn't be to the extent of staring somebody out. Hopefully people can see with how I'm talking to you, I'm looking at you, but I'm not just staring right into your eyes all the time. If you're thinking about a networking event, I always say to people, really make sure you listen to whoever you're talking to. A couple of reasons really. You build rapport if someone feels listened to, and secondly, you're you're really engaging with them and listening to their points of pain and how you might be able to help them. So it's important you keep looking at them to show that you're engaged with what they're saying. So you've got to hold that. If you're presenting, it's really, really important to not just look at one spot and fix on that. You've got to look around the room to make sure everyone feels engaged. That way you can spot if there's anyone that's perhaps getting a bit lost and re-energise the room and bring them in. So it is really important. You've also got to adjust it to how somebody else's eye contact is as well. So for instance, if you go for an interview and the interviewer doesn't look at you non-stop, it's worth trying to mirror that a little bit and perhaps tone down your eye contact. I'm not saying don't do any, even if they don't do any, but just try and mirror them a little bit, because otherwise you'll make them feel quite uncomfortable.
All right then, go on. You've got to do it. You've said the word mirroring. What's that mean then?
It's trying to really subconsciously reflect someone else's body language. So, okay, we are sat at a table here, but we're at a similar sort of angle. And we're positioned in a similar way, and it just subconsciously helps you connect with somebody.
And you do see it a lot, actually, don't you? When somebody folds their arms, the person who's with them will fold their arms. They will mirror subconsciously, won't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it is another form, it's a subliminal level of sort of connecting, isn't it?
It is, and you don't want to freak somebody out. You know, I'm not saying if you're sat opposite the interviewer, you know, you're doing every single yes, it was just completely weird.
That's a bad thing, yeah.
But a similar sort of posture, a stance. I also talk about it in terms of voice as well.
Well, we're going to lead on to voice, actually, weren't you? And very well done, by the way. You can see that you're a true professional doing this. Listen, let's talk about voice in a moment, because I find that really fascinating, because the voice is a very powerful instrument, very powerful tool. You're watching Business Connections Live. Great to have your company, as always. We're live on a Wednesday night, as you can tell. My guest this evening is Joanna. We're talking about really how you should be sorting yourself out when it comes to your personal image, the way you come over to other people. You know, a lot of the time, the professionals that you see on the TV, it isn't by accident that they're present. Mind you, some of the politicians you see at the moment, dear Lord, you think they get that sorted out, wouldn't you? Just some of them. And the characteristics that some of our politicians actually have, why can't they get that particularly right? You end up maybe the triplets that you hear in the way that they talk. You know, we're going to do it this way. We're going to do it this way because we're going to do it, and things that are repeated in threes, things like that. They should be really talking to somebody like Joanna to sort that out. Listen, let me tell you what's coming up on the programme in the next couple of weeks. On next week's show is Richard Eaton of Appware. He builds award-winning smartphone apps. We've talked about apps before on the programme. If you're thinking about getting an app for your business, remember, it's all about engaging your customers. It's all about engaging your, that money line all the way down. So all sorts of advice coming there hit your way from Richard on next week's programme. And then starting in March, now this is quite exciting, we're moving to Monday lunchtimes. Midday on Monday, I must remember to breathe and swallow. Monday, the 2nd of March, will be kicking off at midday. So the programme will be the beginning of the week. Great way to start your business week. And some of our guests in March include Dan Spicer from Hootsuite. If you've used Hootsuite and you've been using it as a tool, maybe to get your social media rocking and rolling, Dan's going to be coming in. He's going to be talking about that. Warren Knight, he's one of the speakers that you see at all the business shows. He's going to be joining us here on the programme. And not from last year's, but the year before, runner-up in The Apprentice, Neil Clough, will be joining us here on the programme as well. And talking about shows, don't forget the business show. It's at XL on the 13th and 14th of May, and we're going to be broadcasting live from the show for the 2 days, and we're really looking forward to doing that. Incidentally, if you are watching us on YouTube at the moment, here's another thing for you to do. Don't forget, you can subscribe. Just simply click on the little button that sits up there and you can subscribe to our channel, and you'll be notified of when the different and the new videos all come out. And as you can see, they're all designed for the small to medium scale business and for large organizations as well. If you're thinking about maybe just getting those hints and tips that you really need, this is the right place to be. The programs are also available on Roku, iTunes, all over the place actually. The UK's leading business channel, we like to think of ourselves. Now, I guess this evening is Joanna Godoin. That is correct in how I'm pronouncing it now. Now, you said the actual way your husband pronounces it is...
Godoin. And so I've adopted that, but it is a
the
French
family
name.
How's the family pronounce it?
Godoin as well, but if you went to France, it's most certainly Godoin, because it's got
Godoin.
French origins.
Yeah, it's a great name, isn't it? You could be all sorts of different things.
Yeah, it's I had a relatively common maiden name, which you couldn't find me online, whereas now I'm certainly very findable. I think I'm the only Joanna Godoin in the world, from what I found. So there's no escaping.
About that, you've actually a proper keyword that is your name. I love it. A powerful keyword. Fantastic. Let's talk about the subject then when it comes to the vocal talent, how you actually articulate the messages that you're trying to get across. Mm-hmm. Do people spend enough time actually formulating in their mind's eye what they're going to say before they say it, or do they just open their mouth and pray?
Yeah, I think they do open their mouths a little too quickly sometimes. We all do, I think. Something I wrote in an article today actually was, remember you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So actually it's really worth listening, and that sort of emphasises what I was saying earlier about when you meet people for the first time. It's really worth listening to them to make sure that what you say is going to be relevant to them as well.
Oh, can I give a tip now? If you are talking to somebody and then they're talking back to you and you're listening, don't stand there going, yep, mm-hmm, yep, yep, mm-hmm, yep, oh yeah, yep, yep. Because while you may think that what you're doing is that you're telling them that you are listening and taking it in, so annoying.
Yes.
I could swing when that happens to me.
I know a couple of people that do that.
Yeah, a lot of people do that, don't they?
Yeah.
So, okay, you've got 2 ears, 1 mouth. Use them in that kind of split. Listen and then speak. What else?
Think about the tone of your voice, the pitch, the volume. There's lots of things to think about in that regard. Think about the different emotions that are communicated. So if you speak very fast, it usually means you're sort of nervous or you're het up. And you don't really want that to be communicated ever in a professional environment, really. I mean, there might be some occasions within corporates where you need to communicate some sort of anger or frustration, but it's not usually a positive thing. So you usually want to have quite a calm, empathetic voice, quite a moderate pace, not too fast, not too slow either, because if you talk too slowly, it portrays a lack of confidence. So you really want to think about being clear, not using too much jargon. Be very careful, especially if you're talking about your work, unless you're really sure the other person, it works in the same sector and they're going to understand what you're talking about, that you avoid using jargon, because otherwise it makes you look a bit of an idiot, to be honest, mm-hmm. and a bit of a show off. So avoid jargon, talk clearly, articulately, don't use fillers. It completely gives a lack of confidence. Better to take a pause and think about what you're going to say.
What about things like at the end of the day?
Yes, I mention that a lot in my workshops.
What you mean now? So at this moment in time, that's the one, isn't it? At this moment in time, I'm putting my glasses on. You mean now you're putting your glasses on?
Yes, they're just fillers and they're meaningless phrases. So to be honest with you, well, what does that mean? The rest of the time you're not being honest? Really? So people just churn out these stock phrases, and again, we all do it.
Well, of course you do,
learned from,
yep.
Childhood.
The other one that is a personal pet hate of mine is, so we've got Joanna on the show tonight, etc. You would never dream of going into a fast food restaurant and say, I'll have a Big Mac, etc. You'd never dream, but people use it in conversation, don't they? They throw these words in. I sometimes think they think that they are business words, and they feel that as you are talking in a business stance, that it's all right to use some of the words that you will find in written business documents in that particular way. And you're dead right about abbreviations. Oh, dear Lord. There are a lot of people who will actually do that. But I think that can sometimes be the culture of the organisation, can't it?
Yes, it can. And as I say, it's absolutely fine if you're certain that people understand. Otherwise, people think it makes them look clever, but it doesn't at all.
Well, you do workshops, don't you? So do you do workshops in how to talk to the media and people like that?
I do workshops in several areas, but on the importance of image and impact, because before you start getting into any of the detail of what matters, you need to convince people, particularly if organisations have brought me in for their teams. So perhaps those people haven't chosen to be there. You need to do that job of explaining why it's important. And they soon see it because they understand that they gather perceptions of people. So that's one area. Then I cover the areas we've talked about, the ABC in detail. I run another workshop called Networking Nous, which is about giving people the confidence and skills to get more out of networking, how to join groups, how to build conversation, rapport, how to leave groups. Importantly, how to leave a group with the permission to follow up with the people you've spoken to. Absolutely pointless to go home with a pile of business cards that you just do what with? Link up with them on LinkedIn, but actually nothing valuable comes. Then there are other topics such as managing your online image. If you think about these days, lots of the time we might not have the chance to meet people face to face. So that means that your voice is more important, your other communications, what people see about you when they Google. Even more important for me, now I have an unusual name because people find me quickly. So always worth people Googling themselves. So I cover that area as well on managing your online image, as well as presentation skills. How to communicate yourself and your message effectively, how to manage your materials so you don't deliver death by PowerPoint, and adapting things to who you're talking to. I work with organisations, obviously individuals. I also do some work with what I call professionals of the future, so schools and universities. So last week I was in talking to a group of university students, about 50 of them in a room, all behind computers, programmers, people in certainly a very casual dress. And
were they engaged?
Well, it was interesting. I was warned they probably wouldn't be, and they'd just carry on tapping away, chat. But actually, I would say 90% of them were. But I completely had to adapt my style to that environment. And actually, I didn't see the environment until sort of 10 minutes before I was due to start. I was warned about it. So I certainly dressed a lot more casually than I would normally to present. I had to shout because it was an enormous room. I used different language. I'm not going to use the same language with a group of computer programmers as a group of lawyers. So very much about adapting to who your audience is.
I mean, it's very interesting, all the aspects that you've talked about there, the adaptation of what you say and the way you say it. The language, I think, is very interesting as well, because particularly in this social media world where we write a lot of things in abbreviated form, yet the likes of Google is actually looking for content that is proper English and written in a way that will entice somebody to read more. Do you sometimes come across people in industry who think that they try to put nearly a show or an act on by using nearly offensive language that will get a reaction? Do you find people that will do that?
They will do. There are some out there, but I think people are becoming more aware that once you put something on the internet, it's there forever. So I think that is getting a little bit better in that regard. But there'll always be people, celebrities do it a lot, to attract attention, the attitude that... Well,
Stephen Fry last week was criticised, wasn't he? It was at the Globes he did, I can't quite remember, but one of the awards ceremonies, and he was swearing on the BAFTAs. And he had a lot of people actually complain afterwards about his tone and also his language. I actually watched the program. I did find him, for a change, quite amusing on that particular show. But there was something about the fact that he changed his language for what he perceived the audience would accept, and maybe actually got it just a little bit wrong.
Yeah, went a bit too far perhaps, because if you think about Stephen Fry, he's great, he's memorable, his voice certainly makes him memorable. His voice is a lot of him, otherwise if you took away his distinctive voice and his slightly sort of bumbling character, you would lose a lot about him, but I think he probably just took that a bit too far, and so he got negative press for it. But then he might not consider that a problem when you're that famous, maybe it matters less, but if
any
you're running
press
a business...
is good press.
Yeah, Robbie Williams today has tweeted something about having pink hair. He accidentally dyed his hair pink. Well, how do you do that? But he's created some PR. But I think if you run a business, you need to be positively memorable, and you need to have a consistent image as well. People need to know what they're going to get from you, especially if they're buying a product or a service from you. So you need to be sure that you and any people that are marketing your business are representing the same thing.
You were talking a little bit about networking and also using your voice in networking. Ladies invariably will have a quieter voice, a lot of them, or a softer voice or a softer tone. Is there any advice you can give women in business when it comes to the way that they project themselves? Because I sometimes think they're at, I hope I'm not going to get crucified for saying this, but a slight disadvantage when it comes to that kind of public environment. Guys are just louder.
Yes,
They may
they
not
are.
be smarter, but they're definitely louder sometimes.
Yeah, no, and you do have to raise your voice a bit. Also, good posture helps you to project your voice better. The other thing is as well to be aware if you have quite a high-pitched voice.
Now, this is a classic story of Margaret Thatcher, wasn't it?
Yeah,
she
had
had
voice
quite a
coaching.
high voice, and she voice trained. Are there any exercises or any things that we could consciously do to lower the tone of our voice? Lovies?
Yes, there are lots of exercises you can do, and it's important to spend time on that if that is an issue for you. Because particularly if you're in a very male-dominated environment, there's a couple of networking groups I go to, and I'm one of a handful of women. There's a particular one on a Friday in the City of London, and it's basically a room full of people, 1 till 3, drinking quite a bit of alcohol and networking. And
That's where you go.
clearly. And people know each other very well. It's a very male environment, and I always say to any women who I say will perhaps attend this, just prepare yourself for that and think about that, because everybody knows each other quite well. It is very male. Think about your voice. Think about how much you are going to drink when you're there, because it's never good to drink very much at a networking event, especially not in the middle of the afternoon. But just really prepare yourself for the environment. If you're in a group of all women, the voice is less of an issue, but certainly men find it very hard to hear high pitch. So actually they will just hear noise. I know that sounds a bit strange, but if you speak in a very
See, if I was
high-pitched
saying
way,
that, I'd be in trouble by now, wouldn't I? You saying it is okay, but if
Yeah.
I was saying, but you're dead right, that higher frequency, the older we get, my hearing is completely shot in the high frequency area. And so when I go to a networking event, what I hear predominantly is the background hubbub of the room. I don't hear the detail in the voices,
Yes.
and that's why I have to make certain I'm very close and I'm actually hearing what is going on. It's a conscious effort. Sometimes I will find myself actually pulling myself back out of the conversation because I don't want to keep going, pardon? Could you repeat that? Because I
Yes.
just can't hear that. And that's from years of wearing headphones in loud studios and things plugged into my ears. But it's also a thing that goes with age as well, isn't it? Guys' hearing does deteriorate as they get older.
Yes, it does, and I think the minute you do hear high pitched, it's quite hard to tune into that. And thinking about the speed you're talking as well, but particularly if you think about networking, you're often in a group. So if somebody's trying to follow, you've got lots of nationalities as well. Perhaps English isn't everybody's first language. So it is very important to think about the tone of your voice, articulate yourself well and talk clearly, and keep your pace at a reasonable rate.
Now, what I'm going to do at the end of the program, I'm going to ask you to give some takeaways, but I'm going to kind of try and summarise where we are at the moment with what we've got. And what I'd also like to do is I would like to divide it between the sexes. Now, if you're watching this
Dangerous
at the
game.
moment, I know if you're watching this at home and you're thinking to yourself, "Oh Lordy, where's he going with this at the moment?" But I mean, the thing is, there are different issues and there are different problems that you have if you're a man, if you're a woman, different ways that you will be perceived. And, it doesn't matter what's written. There can be column inches written all over the place. It doesn't matter that somebody will have an opinion here or an opinion there. There will be perceptions that people will have, and they will be long-held perceptions that you cannot change with a written article. All you can ever do is you can educate, maybe highlight it, so that somebody may recognise that prejudice that they have in the way that they accept somebody in a particular environment. As you know, my business partner, my co-owner, the studio's co-owner is a young lady. Her name's Linda Bazant. Now, sometimes when we go to meetings, and you may have had this done to you as well, we will walk in through the door and we will be introduced and the conversation will be with me. And everybody will look towards me because it's quite obvious I'm the bloke, I must be the boss.
Yes.
I'm just the loud one, whereas the thinking part of the partnership is the other one, and it does really wind her up. And she is actually quite forceful. She's one of these ones where firm handshake,
Yes.
forceful in her views, and forceful in what she wants to get over, and quite focused on getting that over. I suppose what we've got to do, you've got to sometimes override other people's expectations of yourself.
Yes, you have, absolutely. But it's that 10 seconds that's going to frame that. So what you just mentioned there about meeting somebody, that handshake is really important.
Oh,
And-
she'll break your knuckles.
Well, yeah, that's one extreme. But a lot of women, and men do have it too, but the limp fish handshake. It's not great. You think about what happens when you shake somebody's hand and it's negative in some way, and there are lots of ways it can be negative. It stays in your head for quite a few moments, doesn't it? And you're just thinking about that rather than, again, what the person's saying. So
you're so right.
Very important to think about how you approach somebody, the angle, the posture, the handshake, even more so for women.
Down to basics then. Down to basics, a few examples. Handshakes, very important. They're the first thing that we tend to do in business.
Yes.
What is there a right and a wrong way of handshake? You just mentioned there the wet fish. I can't stand it, particularly if the hand is actually warm and sweaty as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I am thinking all the time about the warm and sweaty hand and not what the person's saying. How should you shake hands with somebody?
You always want to make sure you connect right in like that. If you just take the end of somebody's fingers, it's like you don't really want to shake their hand. So really a full-on connection like that.
So a full-on connection then. So it actually, the thumbs. Give me a hand over here so it's in front of. So shake hands. I know it's
like
the wrong
that.
hand. So
yeah,
come
it is
over.
the wrong hand.
Shake hands. Shake.
Like that.
So it's like that. It is proper. It's proper connection. That's what you're thinking about. What about the pressure that you're holding the person?
You want a moderate pressure. You don't want that limp just slightly just touching their hand. You want some grip, but not too hard so that their bones are aching for the next 2 minutes. The bone crusher, as we call it.
And what about the duration of that? How long do you hold that for? You do see, particularly on the continent, people who will hold and talk and won't let go.
Yes.
Is there an etiquette behind how long you should hold for?
In Britain, I mean, obviously it does vary by culture. Greetings overall vary, but it's 2 or 3 quite definite shakes up and down, pull apart. Keep eye contact whilst you're shaking somebody's hand as well. And also think about, is it the handshake going to be the right thing? Because sometimes once you know somebody well, we are going more continental and there are kisses involved. And you don't want to get that wrong either way.
Got to be very careful with that. Now, personal space, particularly in networking environments where it can sometimes be very crowded.
Yes.
What's the right etiquette when it comes to personal space? What should you be considering there?
You do really want about a sort of arm's distance between you. You don't want to feel like you're standing right on top of somebody. The other thing to consider as well is if you're speaking to somebody at networking, this idea of open and closed groups. So what do you want to create? So for example, if I'm standing straight opposite you, it's just the 2 of us talking, I'm really opposite you, our feet are both pointing forward, we're clearly engaged with one another. That's not an invitation to anybody else to join. Okay, you're clearly signalling to everybody else. Absolutely. And I often, clearly, that's not a great thing to be doing at networking because you're there to meet more than one person.
Network. The clue is in the name.
Yeah, but then the other week I went to a meeting and I primarily went to hear somebody speak. I didn't really go for the networking part of it. And there was somebody there that I did want to speak to in depth, who I knew already. And so I deliberately stood like that because I didn't want other people to approach and interrupt us. One brave guy did. He wheedled his way in, but it just meant it was really awkward, and I'm sure he felt that as well. So it's about using your body to that effect to show the person space, but also close off if you're speaking to them. And as a attendee of network events, always look for where there's a clear open gap in a group. Because if you try and push yourself into a closed 2 or a closed 3, it's going to be very uncomfortable.
All right, then let's talk then the overall package in total before you do your piece down the gallery. Actually, something that I must tell you about is this, which I think is just a fantastic opportunity. Joanna has actually put together some offers on her website, Inside Out, Be Your Best Self, and the information that is here is fantastic. Image and impact directly affects your brand and sales. We'll have a quick look at the website, if we may. Thank you very much indeed. Thanks for joining me on Business Connections Live. So obviously she's talking post-program, and she just goes through some of the key things. You know, your first impression is vital to even get the chance to engage with potential clients. A consistent image is a vital foundation for building relationships, rapport building skills. These are just some of the things that Joanna can explain to you. And also, to a certain extent as well, she works her way through the key things that you've got to remember for yourself when you are initially talking to somebody. And also, for that matter, email etiquette, telephone etiquette, all those kind of things are all covered on here as well. Now, you can contact her. She's actually got a comment form on there as well. You can share a story on there as always. And it's just fantastic to be using it in this way as well. I'm going to ask Joanna if she'll actually feedback some of the comments that she gets on there as well, because, you know, really the image, your image is you. It's how people perceive you when they walk out the room. What are they going to be thinking about you as you're walking down the street? What are they going to be saying? Are they going to be saying, you know, that nice guy, nice woman, very professional, understood her subject, very engaging, really enjoyed talking to her, really learnt a lot? Or are they going to be walking away saying, oh, did you meet the one that was a little bit, no, couldn't get away quick enough? You've got a few seconds to get inside their mind's eye to allow you to maximize your ROI, your return on investment in the time that you're taking out to do this. If you're doing presentations, are you doing death by PowerPoint? Do you disengage with your audience when you're standing up there on the stage? I mean, it can be very, very difficult at times, but learn the skills. And of course, Joanna is the lady who you can actually talk to, and she will be able to point you in the right direction, or maybe one of her workshops would be ideal. Okay, I am actually going to ask you to do it straight down the camera anyway. So it's our takeaway bags, our party bags that we've got. But if you can split it for male, female, I'd really appreciate that. If you can't, and it needs to be generalised, then so be it. I'd be quite happy. Have I made too big a thing about male, female?
A little bit. And I think
you can slap me afterwards.
If you want a summary, I think we probably just need to leave some key things to think about, really.
Well, in that case, then, what I'm going to do is I'm going to invite you to look straight down camera number one, take a breath, say who you are, remind us of your organisation, your company, and then we'll just give us 2 or 3 minutes about the key things for us to remember.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. So I really hope that's been useful today. I'm Joanna Godoyne. I run Inside Out Image. I help people in lots of ways, one-to-one and in groups. And what's really important to remember is people do buy people. And we all work with those that we know, like and trust. So you've really got to think about your image, because that is your advert. And for people to certainly like and trust you, they need to feel like they can engage with you and build rapport with you. So do remember that appearance, body language and communication are really key. And on the page that Steve talked to you about, you can sign up for my newsletters, and you also get a free guide on Boost Your Personal Impact. That comes in 6 parts over 6 weeks, so not all in one go. It gives you a week in between to read and come back with any questions. There's also a couple of other offers on there as well. I'm offering a complimentary call for a limited number of people, so get in quick. If you're interested in that, do contact me. And just really remember, you and those that work for you represent your business, and people won't understand your expertise and experience if they haven't got past your positive personal image first. Thank you.
Do you know, it's been absolutely fascinating. It's been really enjoyable. It's a subject that I feel we could probably talk about for hours. So everything from your clothing through to your posture, through to your personal hygiene, the way you use your voice, the way you interact with somebody else at maybe a networking event. Are any of those things impacting the success of your business? Because they can. People may not want to be doing business with you for one of those reasons. They may feel that visually they just don't like you. Just because of the way you dress. Maybe you dress down a little bit too much. Maybe you're a little bit, down with the kids. You think you're cool, but in a business environment, perhaps it's the wrong thing to be wearing. What about the nasal hairs? Do you have those? And yes, I'm talking about the women as well. Check the way you look. The other thing, of course, I would imagine is nails, how they look, whether they're manicured. All these things, subconscious things that people will pick up on an individual basis, and they will make a judgment on you. And then you have the power of your voice, the way you can use your vocal skills, the way you can communicate with somebody, the words you use, not using abbreviations, talking to people in clear, open, honest language. And also keeping eye contact with them. And how do you greet them? Do you greet them with a limp handshake? Or do you greet them with your tongue out, giving them a kiss on both cheeks? Probably a little bit over the top. What you need to be doing is reining it back a bit and understanding exactly the impact that you are making on the person that you are meeting. It's as simple and straightforward as that. Now, I say simple and straightforward, but it is quite involved, isn't it? It's human nature. And sometimes we can't see where we're going wrong. And that's when you need somebody like Joanna to, first of all, identify the problem areas and then to point them out in the way that you are proceeding with the business that you do. Listen, I hope you found this evening absolutely fascinating. I know I did. Can I thank you very much indeed for coming in this evening? It's been a real insight into the way that we interact with people in business. And you know, I suppose when people were looking at this program, initially they were thinking to themselves, it's about the way people dress. And actually, it's the way we are as a whole thing, isn't it?
It's much more than that. And it's very personal as well, which makes it hard for people to really acknowledge that they could do with working on these areas.
Last question for you. Do people ever storm out the room going, I'm never going to talk to her again?
No, usually if they've got to the point of working with me, they understand they want to get more out of themselves and their business, and they want to make some change. And I'm very focused on understanding who they are. That's why my business is called Inside Out. It's about understanding the individuals, but the organisations, because it's not about making you into someone you're not. You are most confident and are going to present yourself most professionally when you feel like you, but your best you.
A lady that makes even the bad news sound good. It's as easy and as straightforward as that. I'll tell you what, that wraps up tonight's programme. We're going to be back again next week. Richard Eaton of Appware is going to be with us, and he is an award-winning smartphone apps developer. He's going to be with us next week. We're looking forward to that. And don't forget as well that Monday from the 2nd of March, we go to midday. Richard Eaton then next week from me, Steve Hardown, and also from Joanna as well. Check out the website, won't you, and to find out more details of that offer too. But from all of us, it's night, and see you next week. Bye for now.